So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the November edition of SMC Discourse. This is our last edition for the year 2025. Now, the SMC is deliberate about understanding the phenomenon of communication, and a platform like this supports this objective. Now, for those who have been consistently attending the forum, you will note that various aspects of communication in our contemporary age are focused on in each of the episodes. And this offers insights into topics such as media practices, technology's influence on communication, social dynamics, and emerging communication challenges. Now, the evolving new media space houses online-based organizations, and businesses, multinationals, and the government are all latching onto the space for several reasons. As an, uncharted path that is also fluid, operating in this space presents both blessings and challenges with far-reaching impacts. Now, question is, how do organizations know what sentiments are held about them, the impact of such, and how to navigate them using social listening? Today, we have a special guest who will be speaking to us on the topic, Public Sentiments, Can Social Listening Help? We have with us Mrs. Esther Momah. Now, Esther is a communications professional with experience across media, technology, and the nonprofit sectors. She has worked on projects that promote social impact, strengthen brands, and foster meaningful engagement. Passionate about purpose-driven work, Esther combines creativity and strategy to inspire change and contribute to sustainable development. So, ladies and gentlemen, please let's welcome Mrs. Esther Momah.
Thank you very much, sir. It's an honor to
welcome.
be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I like I said, it's an honor. I got the notification from SMC, and I thought, wow, this is great. And I'm just really thankful that you have this sort of program going on for professionals in media and communications, and of course they get to learn a lot of what they read in theory and actually experience it by just listening to different professionals share their experiences. And I think learning is just very important, because I mean we're human beings and learning should never stop. So, like you said at the beginning of your introduction, thank you to every single one of you that has, supported this since the beginning of the year. It's an honor to be taking this very last part of this year's edition. So,
It's a delight to have you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Right. So the topic I have been given is public sentiment, how social listening help. How can social listening help? Um, when I saw it, I had to reflect a lot on what I have done in the past, even recent developments. And I just thought, there's quite enough, a lot I can connect to, because it's something that I experience on a daily basis. And being a PR professional, it just shows you how important, that you're able to understand what public sentiment means, and of course, how social tools contribute to how you're able to gauge what your stakeholders, what your target audience are thinking, or how they're responding to every single message that you share online. So it was a perfect selection, and I've just hoped that I'm able to share my own insights. I'd also like this to be very interactive. So I have a couple of questions in the slides that I have shared with SMC. So, from time to time, you could please unmute your mic, to respond, or you can drop your comments in the comment section, and let's just have a really great and interactive session. Next slide, please. Okay, so if you can hear me, what was the first thing that came to mind when you saw this topic? Can anyone offer? Were you of the opinion that yes, it does help, or maybe it doesn't, or you're just neutral, indifferent, Can anyone give an opinion on the call?
Well, I think it does matter a lot, people's perception about
Okay.
your brand, because human beings are highly emotional, and sometimes emotions trump, logic.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, any other opinion?
Any other person who would like to share their thoughts?
Public sentiment. Can social listening help? Okay,
Hi,
let me
guys.
call a few names. Chimiela, are you on the call? Are you with us? Olubukola, Tolu, I see Tolu.
Yeah.
Are you on the call? Okay.
So,
Okay,
Mr.
so I'll
Tolu, would
just
you? Okay. Now, I
Can
thought
you
you
hear
wanted to
me?
say something. I can hear you. Yes.
Dr. Joshua, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Dr. Margaret. Can
Okay,
you
I
hear
was
me?
going to share what comes to mind or what came to mind when I saw the topic.
Okay.
I think that more than ever, organizations and individuals are latching onto the social media space or the online space. And by such engagements, people are making impressions of their operations. Some communicated formally, some informally. But I think that making effort to listen helps people gauge what others are thinking about them and see what they can do to re-strategize or change things. But to go on that space without listening, I think it's a danger too. Thank you.
Okay.
It
Thank you
looks like
very
we have
much.
another hand up.
Okay, Choma.
Dr.
Choma would like
Choma.
to go. Okay, Dr. Choma.
Okay. Good afternoon,
Good
everyone.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Dr. Choma.
Okay, so this is my thoughts when I saw the
Okay.
topic.
Let
I
me.
saw it as
I'll try to change that.
being timely. I also see it as a topic that people will always not pay attention to. I see it as okay. So in organizations, really, most times, I mean, even in some organizations that have provisions or that have rooms for people to, say what they see about them, because people do not really take criticisms. I won't say constructive criticism, because of course, like criticism is very important, but somehow they just make that provision just for the sake of making it fair, but they do not look into it. If you look at organizations, again, when they have like new hires, they don't also want to pay attention to, because it's possible that when you're in a system for overtime, for some time and you feel like, oh, they're not responding, they don't just prepare. But I mean, critically, very, very important that people pay attention to what people are saying. I mean, it just depends. It could be your customers, it could be your clients. If it's in school, it could be your students. You listen to what they're saying. I mean, usually, we know that there's no perfect system, but it will also give you, you know, an idea. Because most times when we think we have top-notch, you know, people who work on our image and all that, it's easy for us to overlook what the internal public or stakeholders are telling us of what we should look at. I think it's just a very important discourse that organizations at different levels, even individuals, I mean, it's a vast topic that people need to, you know, look at. To look at it personally, you have to listen to what people think about. I mean, you could have, oh, I'm a good person, I'm not a reader, but not sometimes. Like people need to tell you. Maybe you may just have blind spots for some of the things you are not putting yourself together. I think it's very, very important that we have this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Choma. You are very correct on every level. And it's just so I think, I mean, we can all agree that it is an important topic, that social listening does help, especially in these times, whether you're an individual or you're a business, or you're really just trying to create something online, you know, for yourself, or create something useful that will help whatever it is that you're trying to achieve as a project or as a commitment to your world. You know, you really just have to pay attention. And so it is not overrated. It's important for us not to be indifferent about it. It's critical in these times. The world has gone very, very digital. So every single one of us needs to be mindful of that. A few years ago, a global brand lost millions in market value in 24 hours, not because they had a product defect, but because a single tweet was triggered. And there were several negative sentiments as a result. So the question to you is, if that happened to your brand, or if that happened to your company or the company you work in or you work for, would you know before the media reports it? Is this something you will wake up in the morning and say, oh, there's a story about XYZ? How come we didn't know? You know, would you be surprised, or would you already anticipate and then quickly find a solution to ensure that it does not escalate? I think it's an important question that every single one of us should ask, or you know, should reflect on. How intentional are you about making sure that every sort of communication that goes out about your brand, you have first-hand information before any external individual stakeholders, especially the media? Yes, you know, it's important that you have first-hand information on those things so that you're not at loss on what you need to do to either repair if there's a damage, or to, of course, celebrate the wins if it's something that is, you know, worth celebrating or worth explaining to your stakeholders. Next slide, please. So today's session objectives, from what I gathered from Dr. Joshua, first of all, to understand what public sentiment is and why it matters. Secondly, to explore how social listening works and its real world impact. And then we're going to examine how organizations, businesses, the media, the government, you know, depending on where, how they use it, and of course to reflect on the human and ethical dimensions of listening, because that's a key word in the subject that we have been given to explore today. Now, what do you think drives public sentiments the most? Facts, emotions, or influencers? Who can give us, I mean, the answer is right on the screen, but it'd be good to have someone share. What do you think drives public sentiment? I know that Dr. Joshua had said something about emotions. What do you agree that emotions drive a lot of what we do or how we gather public sentiments? Do we all agree with that?
I agree with that.
Okay.
However, in the options that were provided, I saw influencer.
Mm-hmm.
I think they play a critical role in bringing these things to our attention.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they could be happening, but we are unaware. But the influencers bring them to the fore, and then we begin to engage with them, and our emotions get in the way and all of that. So I think all the items listed are important to the question you just asked. Thank you.
Okay. Now, you're absolutely correct, but the highest from what research suggests from my, findings online is that emotions, have a very high proportion to how people engage with you, because we're human beings. We're all emotionally driven, one way or the other. Sometimes we're not logical in how we respond or react. Sometimes because of how the internet works, things spread really quickly, and perceptions are shaped almost immediately, without you even having an opportunity to defend yourself. So as much as they're facts, yes, facts is a bit of logic. Influencers, you may look at influencers and have you may have how do I say it, you may have specific people that you naturally just defer to, or people who you just have a liking for, and because they have an influence over your mind and your choices, it really doesn't matter what they say or how they bring together a matter. So sometimes we also now need to look inwards, to what we are saying about an issue or how other people are responding to it as well. So emotions drive a lot of public sentiments, because people are constantly online and they will engage or make certain decisions based on their emotions. Next slide, please. Now, the evolving new media. There was a time, I was listening to a radio station, and I was just, the presenter just kept going on and on about, next slide, please. The next slide had some of the things that I'm trying to speak on. So the presenter, kept going on about all the issues in the country, and one of the people who joined the call, was very bold to say, you guys are just wasting your time because your leaders don't listen. They don't listen to radio. They don't care about any of the things that you're saying here. And I don't know how factual that is, but it is sometimes the way people feel, because the response to fixing issues or addressing matters is not as quick as it should be, as opposed to when something goes on social media. And because we're beginning to see the power of social media, we're beginning to see that more of our leaders are paying attention. One, because they care about, those who really care about what people think about, their administration, care about the projects that, they're driving on a daily basis, so they care and they want to hear feedback. And even big corporations are taking it more seriously to say, okay, if a customer has a concern online, has a concern, they can easily go on social media, and people are intentionally trying to protect themselves, protect their brand. So I think that social media is one of the biggest solutions in the world, because if we thought that TV and radio wasn't working or print wasn't working, you can be sure that anything that goes online will get the required attention it deserves, positive or negative. So things have changed. Please, can we go to the next slide? So yes, so things have changed, and it's not just social media. We're looking at blogs, podcasts, influencer communities. These are all various platforms that transform how our various information flows and how opinions are formed. Like I said, traditional one-way communication is no longer, the go-to platforms. I mean, it's not completely out of the way, but every stakeholder, every single individual, young or old, now have an opportunity to shape the narratives or shape the way things are being said or seen just by connecting online. Like I said, a single viral post, can damage, or strengthen a brand. The government are taking it more seriously. Large corporations, NGOs, legacy media platforms are, all competing for attention and credibility in the same digital space. So I think that very last point is important, that competition, because they know that people are seeing, people are listening, people are paying attention, and you just don't want to be the one falling behind because you're not aware of what's going on. So perception is currency, and sentiment is the heartbeat of public trust. Think of perception as money, is value. You need to care enough that people, perceive your brand a certain way. It's not something you dismiss and say, oh, no, it doesn't matter. If you're in that space where you think that it doesn't matter, then you are in danger zone. Everything about social media, the world online is built to make sure that you are, you care enough about what you're doing. So a strong positive perception, it can open doors for you. It can attract new opportunities. It can build the right kind of influence that you're looking for. Meanwhile, a negative perception can cost you opportunities. In fact, you just need to be sure on what side you want to be on. Perception is currency and is very key. And of course, when I speak of on sentiments are, of course, the emotions, the feelings, the attitudes people have towards you, and you want to build the right trust. You want to build trust, and if you're strong, if you're interested about building a strong brand for yourself, you're mindful not to weaken it by in any way, just by being careless. And because I said it's the heartbeat, like the body keeps things alive, the collective sentiment of the public keeps trust alive, especially if you're in the right standing with people. So good sentiments, positive sentiments, keeps your brand alive, keeps the trust that people have for you alive. So ultimately, how people perceive you and how they feel about you determines your credibility, your acceptance, and your influence. Three things: your credibility, your acceptance, and your influence. So all of that together is important and something that I think we should all bear in mind. Next slide, please. What is public sentiment? I think I have already, in a way defined it. Public sentiment is a collective feeling or attitude towards an issue, organization, or event expressed online in real time. Unlike traditional public opinion, often gathered through polls or through, programs that we listen to, like I mentioned, digital sentiments are spontaneous. You never know when they will come. what time it will come. You just don't know. It's really spontaneous. There's not a one program that someone's going to plan for you and say, okay, come and tell us what you think. Nobody does that when it comes to public sentiment in these times. Right now, as we're speaking, as I'm talking to you, somebody can just be online, even on WhatsApp, just saying something about you or something about your brand. So groups everywhere you are, that it has been created as a platform for a mass of people to belong or to share thoughts or share ideas. You can be sure that anything spontaneous can happen as a result. So unfiltered and emotion driven people. Some people, again, we'll go to values much later, but unfiltered because people don't people share their hearts. They express everything that they think they need to say, good or bad, so you need to be ready for whatever it is that shows up. And of course, like I said, emotion driven, and of course they spread fast. They amplify through networks and can influence decisions from consumer choices to political outcomes. So public sentiment in the digital age, it's very critical. You cannot underestimate it. You cannot live without realizing how important it is. And you also have to know how to know when you have to come to an awareness of it. Yes, you have to come to an awareness of it. Gone are the days where you just use the internet and you think, okay, that's it, I'm online. I think the purpose of this session is to bring it to your awareness, to your consciousness, to say that, the public, whether you're online or offline, actually, is listening. As many people that you're trying to attract, especially the people that are your key target audience, you are being watched. People are paying attention to you every single day, and we cannot afford to forget that. Next slide, please. Now, why does it matter? It shapes brand perception and trust. Yes. Influences decision-making and customer loyalty, and it drives policy and advocacy outcomes, and it detects crises early. These four things are very important. I think I've touched on it a little bit. Brand perception. Brand perception is everything. For yourself, for the brand that you represent, it is everything. And it calls to a certain level of responsibility on your path, as a communications professional, that your brand or the brand that you represent means something or should mean something to you. So you work, with that sense of responsibility to that brand, or whether you're building it for yourself or you're building it for others. And trust is important. I think when you're thinking about public sentiments, there's a certain type of loyalty you should have because if it's yourself, if you're building for yourself, you already have a loyalty to yourself, right? And you expect that loyalty from those that you employ or those that you engage to provide certain services for you. I think we always detach that from when we start working for people, or when we're part of a community that is building something, whether you're part of a small project, you've been invited to a project, I say that if you're going to build a really solid brand, you have to be someone who is loyal, who has you must have a certain type of loyalty, and of course understand the depth of loyalty, so that you're careful enough to stand and represent the brand carefully. Influences decision making and customer loyalty, that's everything. Who are you selling to? Why should they care about your brand? Why should they care about you? Why should they care about anything that you're saying or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve? So you're constantly helping people to make decisions, and you want to make sure that they're making the right decisions, and that because you're responsible, they come to a place of loyalty for your brand, for who you are, for the products that you sell, and everything about you. So it's just very important. Of course, it drives policy and advocacy outcomes. Why? Why does public sentiment, why does it drive policy? Why does social listening drive policy? Because for you to even come up with a policy, you need to know what is happening. You need to know the issues on ground. You need to know the challenges. You need to know how to address those challenges. And you need to be able to get feedback from people. I think a lot of policymakers go on to do things that don't speak to the problems or don't address the issues that are on ground. And so they make abstract policies that, it doesn't help. And people cannot, so sometimes we hear a government say, oh, there's a policy that does this, and people are trying to understand how you came about that policy without having had a conversation. Policymakers, if you're a policymaker, or if you know a policymaker, this is a topic that they should also be mindful of. And of course, if you want to drive advocacy outcomes, if you want to drive change, if you want to know how to ensure that people care enough about a particular situation, a particular issue, you also need to know how to engage meaningfully with your target audience. You also need to be able to get feedback from them and make the right decisions, and of course know how to solve the problem in the best way possible. And of course you can detect crisis early because you are always in touch with what's going on. You have the right tools in place, you have the right people in place, and you're not constantly solving one crisis after the other. It's tedious, it's a waste of time, and that's why technology is available. You don't want to have to be in a situation where you're just losing your your peace. You're worried about your mental health because you're not doing what you should do when it comes to public listening, and when it comes to managing public sentiment, social listening, and when it comes to managing public sentiments. Some of us, we're aware of all the various fintechs, or social issues that have happened in the last couple of years. And even every day now, we hear reactions on social media, so every day something is new, something is happening. We're triggering emotions on a daily basis. And those things are so powerful. I said here that, for example, government reforms, fuel subsidy removal, all of those things trigger emotional waves that shape national mood. It's so powerful that you can sit on your laptop or on social media, and one story, one feedback, one major disaster, one major comment, a story, something just goes up online, and then it spreads so widely. Or even just a social or your WhatsApp group, you're just on your phone quietly, and then you pick up your phone and you read something that just changes your entire mood. It's like football. I like to use football in the seasons when people watch football. You see how the ups and downs, the emotions, you're neither here nor there until the end of the match. And then even after the end of the match, if there's a win, everybody celebrates. And if there isn't, everybody is just moody, everybody's sad, so it just shows you how powerful these things are, how public sentiments can shape national mood. And sometimes you don't even know why you're sad. Sometimes you can't explain it until you reflect and think and say, okay, maybe it's actually this thing, this story I read online, or it's perhaps this event that has happened, or it's perhaps the various comments that I have read under a story, or it's perhaps, so you have to think back and then see how influential it is that, you know, just engaging online, engaging with what people are saying, whether you're reading a newspaper or whether you're just watching TV, you know, it does something to your mood, and something that you need to protect. You know, that's another subject, you know, to talk about, but just shows you how powerful public listening is. And so while you're listening, it's also good to be mindful of how much you engage at the same time. So think of sentiments as the pulse of society. I said here that like doctors would check vitals before a diagnosis, or organizations may check, organizations must check public sentiments before making critical moves, right? So it's something that you need to, like I said, be mindful of before you can address a situation, before certain drugs can be administered to you, certain things have been, you know, put in place. The doctor will need to make, you know, checks. You need to, you know, use whatever education they have to then make a decision to say, okay, this is the problem and this is how you're going to solve it. You know, it is the pulse of society. It is how you make your decisions. It's really the pulse of society. It's really the pulse of how you move, what you wake up to do in the morning or later in the day. It determines every single thing, and I think that we need to be mindful of that. Next slide, please.
Can I ask
Okay. Yes,
a
please go
question?
ahead.
Yeah. When you talk about public sentiment, you know, I tend to think about the Nigerian public, which appears to defy all logic in terms of how public respond to issues. Because Nigeria is so filled with, should I call it, diverse illogical sentiments that you can't even predict. Because for some people, it is driven by religion, some people tribalism. So in essence, it's like when you are facing such sentiments, you will not even know how to tackle them because they have blocks. Some people may approach the issue based on their tribal sentiment, some based on their religious sentiments and all that. So you as a person may want to do the right thing, but find out what you do can only ameliorate the people in this group because of their religious sentiment and the other side. So how do you decide on taking the right policy or the right decision when you have various sentiments involved, especially in the Nigerian context? Because like there are things that can happen in other clients, like the Western culture, where everybody will rally around and express the same sentiment. And then, you know, something can be achieved by it. But Nigerian situation is such that you can hardly get to the point where everybody will agree. Some people, because of their religion or whatever, will have a different sentiment. So you find it difficult to really understand, I mean, the right step or the right policy to take because of this variety. So how do you handle such situation?
That's a very interesting question, because we as Nigerians were very, very diverse in our opinions, and something that you know, it really is a concern. But from my own point of view, I would go back to your values, right? You can't solve everybody's problem. But what you can do is make sure that you're very transparent about who you are. You're very transparent about what you stand for, and you are communicating as often as possible. The minute you stay silent, then you open the door for people to think what they're not supposed to think. So communication is very important. And how do you communicate? Remember who you are. What do you stand for? What do you want people to remember you for? What are the facts, right? You know, I said one of the questions I asked was, what are the key things? So facts, emotions, or you have certain people who will influence for you. So you have to review all of those things and then push out your message and let it stay there. The more you stay consistent to who you are and what it is you're trying to achieve, the better for you, you know, because you can't afford to say one thing today and change your mind the next day. You definitely have to know that consistency, the more you repeat the same message over and over again, these various categories of people at some point, especially because they always have spokesmen and women who are the ones driving the agenda. So you need to have have a relationship with them, have a way to communicate with them directly, so that they are also able to, you know, share or explain what your position is on a matter. So here again, in this moment, I think of relationships, right? So you're communicating, you're building the right type of relationships. You need to have people who are speaking for you and are consistently speaking on what you stand for, you know, to address a matter. And the more consistent you are, the better for you, because at some point, each group or category or category of people will come to appreciate the fact that this is what it is, this is the solution that you're provided, and then everybody's happy at some point, you know. So my position is, you can't solve everybody's problem, but you must make the effort to build the right structure, build the right relationships, people who will amplify the message that you have, so that they can better explain it for you, and hopefully in due time, you know, everything, whatever is negative, will fizzle out and everybody will come to a good understanding of what's happening. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. So we'll go into what social listening is. It's a process of monitoring and analyzing conversations, mentions, and trends across digital platforms, such as social media, blogs, forums, and review sites, to understand what people are saying about a brand, a topic, or industry. It goes beyond just tracking keywords or mentions. Now, there's a term called social monitoring, and there's actually a term called social listening. Social listening focuses on understanding the sentiment, the context, and intent behind those conversations, while social monitoring is just you and data, you and the facts, right? So you move beyond those, you know, you move beyond the data that you have, and you're able to then extract actionable insights from the data. I think when I started my journey in comms, you know, there was a lot of tracking. You know, I would say, oh, we have 500 people now following us on Twitter. Then, you know, X was called Twitter. Or we have, in over a month or 2 months or the first quarter, we have 10,000 followers, you know, and then you're happy about the numbers and you want to report it to the board. And then I think at the time it was when these ticks that show up on social media that sort of confirm the authenticity of your platform, you know, because you've reached a certain number of followers, you know, you reach a certain type of engagement, you know, so they give you this badge of honor, you know, and you're just happy, you know, that, oh, you've been able to gather this much, you know, followership and engagement. So that was what it was before. Social monitoring, you're happy, right? It makes sense. But now we're moving into a field where social listening is beyond just monitoring. It's beyond just gathering data. You now need to understand, even if it's just 10 people that are following you on social media, even if it's just 10 people that listen to your program on TV or radio, whatever it is, as long as you have a few people engaging with you because they buy into what it is that you're selling, or in the ideology of what you stand for, you need to be careful. You need to know what they're saying. You need to understand what they're trying to tell you at every point in time. So don't worry about the numbers anymore. I think a lot of people dwell on the numbers. It's like a pastor who says, "Oh, I don't have enough members, and so therefore I'm not really concerned about, even if you just have 20 people, go out and bring more people." Meanwhile, you can do a lot with the 20 people you have. And they could be the voice, they could be your voice, for 100 more to come in, so we've moved beyond social monitoring. We're now in the phase where social listening is important, and it means taking every single stakeholder as the only stakeholder that you have. So turning online chatter or anywhere that there's a conversation into actionable insights. So I like to ask a question. On a scale of 1 to 5, how aware are you of your digital footprint? How conscious are you of what is being said about you or about your brand? And how closely do you follow the conversations happening around your name or your reputation? How conscious are you of all of these things? I think it's something that we should leave today's session with, to reflect on, to see what we can do better. Sometimes if you need to do a research on yourself online, I do that from time to time. Even on my parents, funny enough, my sister, I could just decide that I want to know what's going on, so that I can give feedback, or just on a friend, so that I can do feedback, because like I said before, taking responsibility, loyalty, not just for yourself, but the people you care about, so I want us to also not leave this session just thinking about ourselves, but also extend the lessons and the learnings that we get here to other people. So everybody needs to be mindful of their digital footprint. They need to be mindful of what people are saying about them. They need to follow the conversations that are happening around them, because your name and your reputation are at stake. And I just think that is a very important thing to remember. Next slide, please. Now, why does social listening matter? You can't manage what you don't understand. Social listening helps you decode the why behind reactions, not just the what. I like people who ask why questions. I have a colleague at work who is constantly asking, why are we doing this? Initially I had to get used to the idea that he was always asking why. You would think that it was clear what you're trying to achieve, and then he'll come back and ask you why. Explain this to me. Why are we doing this? And the more I got used to hearing his, why questions, the more I would actually spend time to ask myself and justify what it is that I'm trying to achieve, and even understand what it is that I'm trying to achieve by going through the process of it. So asking why questions is important, right? You can ask your what. What are we doing? Oh, we're doing this. We're going for an event, or we just want to put out a social media post on this and that. Oh, we just want to, you can ask, a lot of people know what the what is, but not what the why is. What is the reason for this? What are the tangible outcomes that could come out of it, because you know what your why is? So social listening helps you know your why. It helps you preempt your why. It helps you preempt what could happen as a result. So it enables timely, informed, and empathetic response. So why is very critical. Every single person needs to remember that. Now, it helps organizations to monitor what is being said about you and your competitors. Yes. I think in the spirit of talking about competitors, if you're in business, you need to know also what's going on with your competitors. You cannot, do business, on an island. You need to know what's going on out there. You need to find strategies to improve. What are they doing that we're not doing well? How do we improve in these areas? What are they failing at that, we also need to look at and say, oh, we don't want to make that mistake. So competitor analysis is important if you're building anything. If you have an organization that you're leading or that you're part of, decode how people feel, positive, negative, or neutral. It does that for you. Social listening does that for you. Understand why those sentiments exist, the root causes, and emotional triggers. And of course, it takes you're able to make timely informed actions, whether to improve a service or you want to correct misinformation or leverage positive trends. These are all, benefits that speak to why social listening is important. I think I like to speak on leveraging positive trends. So if you're someone who cares enough about social listening, trends are very important, because as much as, we have platforms like X that, will just naturally spring up, various trends on online. And, those of us that are content creators, especially on social media, tend to want to use those trends to create endearing messages to our target audience. So you want to know what's going on. You don't want to know what's trending. And if those things that are trending connect with the values that you stand for, and are creative enough for you to use those trends as an opportunity to speak to your audience in a way that resonates with them. So trends are important when you're doing social listening, because I just think that it's the easiest way. It's the easiest way to share your message, to get people to understand your character, your nature, or your personality as a brand. And when you do it well and you do it strategically, because it's not just copy and paste, you don't see a trend and you just copy and paste it. You can see a trend and think about it critically, and then ask your why questions, and then make it work in an even more exciting way. And people just, I think that's why a lot of people will say, oh, we saw this trend. And when you do a research, you will find that trend actually originated from somewhere, maybe somewhere far away, outside their local, their geographical area, but they were able to do an excellent job of making sure that those trends work. So whatever it is that you're doing, just make sure that you're able to speak positively to your target audience. Next slide, please. Okay, so how does social listening work? Next slide, please. Now, it starts with monitoring. Like I said, at the very beginning of my career in my career in communications, it always starts with monitoring. So you track conversations across digital platforms, your X, your Instagram, your TikTok, your blogs, your WhatsApp groups, your Instagram groups, anywhere that there is an audience. And of course, you use keywords and hashtags or brand mentions to do that. So you can do a search with, specific keywords. And I think there's a science behind keywords. Remember, there was a Google training that I attended, and they taught us the combination of words, the specific words that will produce the right results for you. And even the science of doing research on Google, there's a science to it. It's something that I think we may want to look into, so that you know the right keywords to put in your search, in your attempt to search and find what conversations are happening concerning your brand. And of course, your hashtags. There's also a science behind hashtags. You can't just sit down and create random hashtags or too long hashtags, or hashtags that are not meaningful. You also need to know that whatever hashtag you use and you create visibility for, you try to promote, just know that people are using it at one point or the other, and it's important. And people also from my experience, people also imitate or may change your own hashtag to fit there. So if I say Esther, Halima, I'm trying to think off the top of my head what a good hashtag. Somebody could maybe remove the Esther or the cook or the food, you know, and add a word or two to that hashtag. And the good thing about search is that it will bring up anything that is connected to a specific type of use of words, you know, so that you see various options. It presents various options to you, and then you can then say, okay, this is very closely to what our own hashtag is. What is this person saying? How does it connect to our own message? And sometimes there are similarities, only that the person has changed that hashtag because of what they are also trying to achieve. And of course, brand mentions across the internet, across different platforms. People are mentioning, people are saying something about your brand, people are tagging you, people are using your own hashtags. So you need to know what all these things are so that you can track the right conversations. And of course, analysis, you use sentiment analysis tools and AI to interpret emotions, tones, and topics, identifying whether mentioned clusters are positive, negative, or neutral. So they're sentiment analysis tools. In fact, most of the great social listening tools have a way of analyzing you know, people out there. AI is done incredibly well. AI is being integrated on various platforms that we use now, and they're able to interpret various, you know, emotions, the tones, the topics, and help you understand really what's going on. And then insights, you extract patterns. What are people saying? When do spikes occur? Who is leading the conversation? All of those things are important. And you should be mindful of the fact that not all these tools can do all of these things. Some tools do strictly monitoring. Some tools do monitoring and analysis. Some tools provide the insights for you. So it depends on your budget. And it also depends on how far you want to go when it comes to social listening. So don't assume that any social listening tool that you get will achieve all of these things for you. I think we should always remember that. And of course, response and strategy, you translate the insight into actions. What are we doing? Are we going to are we just a messaging because this group of people in Adamawa are saying this and that, or this group of people are saying this, you know. So like your questions, Dr. Chimela, you asked a question on this, you know, you're going to have to find a way to speak to different target audience because you have a tool or because you have a social listening structure in place that allows you to identify these various groups of people. So you can adjust your messaging to those people. You can speak specifically to them through the various platforms or wherever it is that you find them. So that's the benefit of social listening. And I think it's a great opportunity for the question that you asked, which is, you know, your response and strategy. You may not be able to solve their problems. You may not be able to make everybody happy, you know, and in the right standing with you, but you have a strategy to actually communicate with them through the influencers or through the people that can connect on an emotional basis. And social listening does that for you because you're then able to find them and then, you know, adjust your messaging to them. Of course, you're able to respond to crisis and launch as many campaigns as possible. Next slide, please. Applications and case studies. So here, there are just a couple of categories of, can you please move to the next slide? Just a couple of sectors that I have listed here. I don't know where everyone falls in, whether you're a brand or a business, or you're in the government, you work in government, or you're strictly media professional, or maybe you have an NGO. Different categories, different sectors track different things. So if you're a business owner, you're tracking your product launch, your product launch results. You're tracking your service quality. If you're in government, you're checking out, okay, what do people think about policies? What is being communicated that is not correct in terms of miscommunication, information, or what are people saying about a crisis that may have developed as a result of maybe someone, within our space, said a careless statement or something. So you're able to track those things. So governments typically track policies, misinformation, or crises related to what they do or what they stand for. And of course, media organizations, who we are, we're constantly tracking topics and audience emotions that shape content. Okay, so I'm thinking I should be rounding off soon. And of course, NGOs, they track public response to campaigns and social issues. Next slide, please. We're just going to run through it. So some key data points. I found this very interesting because from global social listening, the global social listening market is estimated to be $8.44 billion US dollars, and in 2024, and it's going to it's going to grow to about 16.19 billion by 2029. That just shows you that the world, the global, and the businesses around the world are beginning to take this seriously. Investment in these tools is not a joke. People are taking their social listening critically. It's the easiest thing to do. Technology does that for you. So you do need to put a budget in place and invest the right resources to ensure that you're tracking, you're monitoring, you're responding strategically to what people are saying, and of course, data-driven decisions in real time. Some facts and figures, some trends that I found online. There's an increasing demand for AI sentiment analysis because it's easy, it's fast, even though AI sometimes can be wrong, but you then need to know what exactly is being said and how AI is interpreting the. And of course, social listening for product innovation, competitive intelligence, and brand management. There's also high dependence on cloud-based deployment. People prefer scalable solutions that handle big data. You don't want to have a tool that you cannot. You're not sure of how much information it can take. You want to use the right tool. When you're spending money on that tool, is scalable for your business, and of course provides real time as much as if somebody just copys your name or copies your business name, it shows up anywhere online. It shows up anywhere online because you put that structure in place. Language also matters. I read an article yesterday on how it's important that AI should be built, to also consider the Africans essentially, and I thought it was interesting because of course, AI it is not something that originated from here, so for you to then require that Africans are considered is also important. And because we are also becoming even more digitally inclined and our technology is growing, those of us who understand how technology works, we need to be able to ensure that our analysis considers our own expressions, our own manner of communicating, and we're able to track, because we understand how we as Africans communicate. We can't just live sentiment analysis to how AI interprets foreign expressions or foreign communication. So I just thought to mention that. Also, social listening market in Africa is growing. I just gave you a global overview, but in Africa is growing as well because more people are connecting online. There's an increase in social media accounts, and so the more people connect, the more you want to be able to track what each of them are saying. Maybe not each of them, but a good proportion of your audience online. So investing gives you a competitive advantage. Of course, real-time insight as well. I like integration with CRM tools. If you have a customer relationship management tool, you want to be able to integrate your social listening process or strategy in place as well, because it's also quick for you. You can then tailor specific messages. You can tell your customer service unit to say, okay, we have a person, have someone who has a situation, we have a customer who has a situation, this is what he has said, or this is what he's saying, or and then you tailor, you can develop content specifically for him. And once you do that, I don't know if you've ever received a message from a specific brand or individual, and you wonder how they're able to know that, how they're able to get that information. And that's because they're listening. You may not speak about them, but you may be talking about an issue that concerns them and they're interested, and then they send you a message and you wonder how they're able to get that, because they're listening, because they care enough about you and your concerns or the things that excites you, so they tailor the right message to you. Now, the human side of listening. When I thought about this topic, please, next slide. When I thought about this topic, I said, one of the things that I will emphasize during the presentation is why listening is important. If you don't listen, if you're not someone who naturally listens in real life, in real face-to-face conversations, it will be hard for you to even want to pay attention to what is happening in the digital world, or wherever it is that people are talking or having conversations around your brand, around an issue that concerns you. So we're moving from data to empathy. Empathy because we're emotional human beings. Empathy because listening builds relationships. Listening helps you to break all kinds of barriers if they're exist, and it's just a special way to get your message across. So qualities of a good listener: empathy, you hear beyond words. You have the spirit and the patience to hear beyond what is being said. Curiosity, you seek context, you ask your why. Patience, you avoid quick reactions. Objectivity, you're able to filter personal bias, very important. And then discernment, speaks now. Yes, respond, but how often do you respond? How quickly do you respond? If you must respond, when do you respond? Do you have to respond to everything? I don't think so. So these qualities are important. So empathy, curiosity, patience, objectivity, and discernment are critical if you want to master the art of social listening and understand what good public sentiment, what public sentiment is about, and how to navigate yourself around, managing your relationships. Now, what makes you a good listener, and where do you struggle, is something you may want to ask yourself. What makes you a good listener, and where do you struggle? Now, leaders who don't listen to stakeholders soon have stakeholders who stop listening, who stop talking. If the more you listen, the more you get information. The less you don't, the less people stop talking to you. It's like a father and a daughter, a mother and a relationship. You must listen to people that you care about or should care about. So listening isn't just communication, it is emotional intelligence. And in an age of outrage where people just say whatever it is that comes to their mind, unfiltered, deep listening is a wise decision. So today, improve or make a decision to listen well and listen better than you do better than you've ever done before. You can pray about it if you need to. You can seek counsel. You can ask people who are really good about it and ask them, what makes you a good listener? How do you listen so well? You know, I think the best leaders are the best listeners. You cannot solve a problem if you do not understand how to solve that problem. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So there are different stages in the social in social listening, different maturity. There's a model, the maturity model for social listening. First of all, we start with the reactive stage. Organizations simply notice what is being said, yes, and then they will have the responsive stage, which is that they respond, but may lack deeper insight. You know, so this comes to, you may be hearing this, but you may have
Esther, I
a
have
team.
my hand raised, please. I don't know if you can
Okay.
see my hand. Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah.
How
Please,
many
I
more
think
minutes do I have?
we've shot our minutes by 8 minutes already. We're gone past the time we're supposed to call it off.
Okay.
We're going to be sharing the slides with participants. That we do that often. So for the rest, I think you still have a lot to go. We could share that and digest. So at this point, if you don't mind, I would like that you take a couple of questions so we could wrap up, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So let me quickly just round up so that we can then go into the
You
questions.
can round up in 1 minute. You know, just round up in
Okay.
a minute. Yes.
Okay. So I'll just end with the last slide, which I have here, that as communicators, we're not just here to monitor trends, but to minister truth wisely, compassionately, and responsibly. Listening reveals a certain level of humility. It reveals a certain level of curiosity and character, whether in a leader, a government, or a brand. So these things are very important. Certain values that I've mentioned here are very important if you're going to get public sentiments right, if you're going to get your social listening strategy right. Thank you very much. So do we have any questions?
Well, I want to begin by saying a very big thank you to Mrs. Esther, you know, for, you know, this presentation. It's been very interesting. I wish we had more time, but, you know, our time is far spent. So I'll start with the questions. The first question will be, what metrics should organizations or individuals be most concerned with, you know, or concerned about when it comes to their brand identity, social listening? So should they be concerned about likes, shares, comments, you know, timestamps that determine how many seconds, minutes, hours people have been on their content or on their digital resource?
What should they care the most about?
So what metrics should, you know, inform, you know, public sentiments? And what are these metrics that people should be most concerned about?
Okay, I would say reach is important, because you will find that in a few analytical tools that I have used, if you're able to determine how far and how wide your message has gone and the various people that it has reached, it's important, because people may not engage with your post, but you may find that certain crops of people, certain clusters of people have seen your message. And especially if you are targeting those people, you're clear that, you know, they're seeing your message, and in one way or the other, they're responding to you even outside. You know, if for example you run a campaign on Facebook, they may not respond to you directly on Facebook. They may send you an email because they know what it is that you have put out there. They may have a conversation with you and say, oh, we saw something online and you said this and that. Why? What's going on? Or they could just carry that information and talk about it on a blog or in a conversation outside, anywhere. So I think if you can determine what your reach is important. And there is a strategy to determining what your reach is. More and more and more, I'm seeing that likes may not cut it. You may have 5 likes, 100 likes, and then people move on. But how well can you determine who is seeing that message, and what category of people in different geographical areas are seeing it? Because when you're able to say, oh, I was able to reach this particular message or campaign, reach XY number of people in Oyo State or in the UK, when people of people in that geographical location call you or engage with you, you already know why, you already know how, you can already explain to yourself, to your management, because you have information on how that happened. And then the likes and the engagement online are just additional metrics for you, because people are then responding, whether positively or negatively. But first of all, you must understand how wide your message is. I think for me, that would be an important metric for checking, how well or how far you're doing on social listening. Does that help? Or you have does that answer your question, sir?
Joshua, does this answer your question?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yes, it does answer my question. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you. I have a follow-up question, though.
Okay.
So I had, I'm not sure if, everyone wasn't privy to the slides before the presentation. But since I had gone through the slides and I don't know if we covered this aspect as a question I'd like to ask, and I hope it will help everybody else. Now, with social listening, how can we strike that balance between data collection and social listening? Because I know at a point you did indicate that at some point in time you have to stop collecting data and start listening. So how can we determine that we have collected sufficient data and we should start, paying attention to listening?
That's an interesting question. How do you know when to stop collecting data so that you can start listening? So it's not even about when to stop. It is how well you're even addressing or using that data. So you don't want data to keep piling up and you're not doing anything about it until an issue escalates. So the idea is for you to get the data and listen effectively, and then have a strategy in place for you to address whatever it is that you have listened to or that you have observed. So it's not really about stopping, it's more about using that data to say, okay, this is happening. And of course, if you have the right resources in place and if you have enough hands in place, you can then have certain divisions of people who are sharing or sending out that information for you on a regular basis. So it's not how much data you have or how little the data is what you do with the data, is how you transform that data to making the right decisions for your target audience, and how quickly you do it. I sometimes like people who say, oh, we work in a fast-paced organization. So when it comes to using data, you have to be fast, you have to be quick, you have to be responsive, you have to be on the go, and you may not know how to do it. So you need to work with the right people who understand how to use data. how to translate that data into actionable insight. You know, there are people who are skilled, they learn that skill, they develop that skill, they hone their skill, they know how it works. So as it's coming, you're translating it. Sometimes, depending on how sensitive the matter is, it may take time. You know, especially if you're in a structure where there are different levels of approvals before certain things are said, you know, but in doing that, your role as a communications professional is to understand the structure and understand who is your spokesperson for each unit or each approval stage that can speed things up for you. In these times, you cannot afford to just let things slow. You know, there must be one way or the other that you're able to address the matter as quickly as possible. So it's not how much data you have, but how quickly and how intelligent you are to use the data and, you know, extract the right action, the right strategy to address whatever it is that you've gathered.
All right. Thank you, Esther. Our time is far spent. Unfortunately, we won't be able to, take more questions. Right. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Once again, I would like to thank Mrs. Esther Momah. This has been a very interesting, presentation. Unfortunately, we don't have, all the time in the world. Right. Now, as indicated at the beginning of today's session, this is the final meeting, of this year. And so we would like to thank all the speakers who have volunteered their time to speak to us throughout the year. And we also want to thank everyone else who has participated in some capacity. We appreciate, your participation. So thank you all for tuning in, and then enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
Bye.
you, Esther. You gave us
Thank
just
you.
so much. Thank you so much.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you. I
Thank you very
appreciate
I
it.
much.
appreciate this.
Anyway.
And we hope that you keep your doors open for us to.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
then.
you.
Goodbye now. Yeah.
Bye.
All right,
Bye.
bye. Bye.